Yes, thanks again, Prof, for joining us on Anchored in Law. We now move to a segment that deals with technology and professions. What are your thoughts on the implications of this new kid on the block, at least new to me, that's called ChatGPT? What do you think are the implications of that for professions like the legal profession?
Well, I think it is going to be very good for the legal profession because you're going to reach a stage where you could just input all the documents that have been said in a court of law, input all the audios and the visuals that have happened in the courtroom, and the artificial intelligence algorithm is going to come up with a judgment, and it's going to write a judgment using writing algorithms such as Chat GPT.
Sorry to interrupt you. For those of us who are ignorant about what exactly this Chat GPT thing is, could you, in as lay person terms as possible, just briefly describe what it is before we get into what it does?
It's actually a piece of technology where instead of searching for information like Google, you can just go and say, please write an essay on Vuyani Ngalwana. And that essay must be 1,000 words. And then it's going to write that essay for you. I don't know whether you should go and try it. You should go and try it. And it will write it. And you can go and check whether it plagiarized or not. It does not plagiarize. 99% completely its own words. So people are saying we have to go back to the times in which at universities you lock people into a room and say, write an essay while I watch, without you having that tool.
Have
But
you
now,
had occasion to use that tool yourself, Prof?
absolutely, I have gone. I will send you some of the screenshot about people, about myself. It did make a bit of a mistake because it said I graduated from University of Pretoria. I did not graduate from University of Pretoria, and obviously, when you ask it to write the essay about me on a number of occasions, it comes up with a different essay all the time using the information, all the places where you have gone, all the things that you have done. It goes to the internet and so on and so forth. So it is going to revolutionize writing. It's going to simplify writing. Already technology was simplifying all that. You don't have to worry about spelling now. You don't have to employ a person who looks at documents and see whether they're spelled right, because our softwares have spell checks. Now you are going to have a software that actually can be able to create an essay for you. I think that is exciting. Now, the question that we have to ask ourselves is that, is it not going to take away jobs from people? The people
Well,
who used to
more
draft.
to the point, is it not going to make lawyers redundant? Is it not going to make judges redundant if it can write judgments just by you feeding it information?
Well, luckily, people who still want a judge. People still want a judge because there are emotional aspect of the job. I know they are not supposed to be emotional. The fact that there is a human being who understands me as a human being and my feelings does put many people at ease.
On this point of computers, you say it's not a computer, is it? It's an
It's an AI.
algorithm.
It's an AI, artificial intelligence algorithm.
Yes. Now, I read a book that a friend of mine presented to me, gave it to me as a present because she thought I needed to read a book by Malcolm Gladwell. It's titled
Yeah.
Talking to Strangers.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very useful book. Certainly, it assists trial lawyers to think differently about um, uh, examining and cross-examining witnesses, also how to read body language and so on. One of the studies which Malcolm Gladwell references in his book is one of an algorithm is pitted against a real human judge to review cases where people approach the court for bail, where they've committed criminal offenses. And the outcome, just to cut a long story short, the finding there is that the algorithm did infinitely better than the human judge.
Of course,
the human judge, even though the human judge was looking at the applicant for bail, could see the applicant's body language, could hear him or her, and the computer simply dealt with it on the basis of information that is fed into it. Got it more right than the judge did. The judge released people who should never have been released on bail, who went on to commit further crimes, and refused bail to people who should have been granted bail. Now, what does that tell you about the power of artificial intelligence? Things like this ChatGPT versus a human judge who you say people are attracted by the emotion and they want to see the human being. But if the algorithm is going to yield more reliable results than the human, isn't the choice clear going forward?
It's absolutely, the choice is actually quite clear. In fact, there is a study that was done by Columbia University and Ben Gurion University where they investigated, I think, 1,000 judges and their judgments, and they found out that they are harsher just before, if they make their judgment just before lunch than after lunch. Statistically, it was very, very clear. It's actually quite a well-known study that was done in 2011. So, algorithms are obviously going to take the emotional aspect of decision-making for much more rational and better decision-making. So, what is going to happen in the midterm? In the midterm, we're going to see judges and lawyers relying on technology to help them make decisions. That is when we say a human-machine system working as a system. Whether in the long run, we would be at a position where we will say, as a nation, we no longer need judges, I'm not too sure about that. I think these tools must be used as decision support tools. Human must always be in the loop because we can be able, okay, for this one, you can't hold a judge responsible. But if it was a doctor, and operation has to be done, whenever there are mistakes, you know who to actually make to account. It's a human being. Now, if it is an algorithm that is evolving, who is actually supposed to be held to account? So in the medium term, you are going to have a human doctor working with a machine. In the long run, there will be certain tasks that we are going to say, hey, the machines are so good, like radiology. We know that radiology is going to die because a machine is able to read medical images much, much better than a human doctor. And we should not be afraid of adopting that.
Yes. All right. We're nearing the end, Professor. I see that we've reached your time limit. But can I ask you one last question before I throw the wide, no holds barred questions that I'd like you to deal with? I, as you probably know, am a member of a bar called the Advocates. It's called PABASA, Pan-African Bar Association of South Africa. We are the only bar with a full-time school of advocacy called the Pius Langa School of Advocacy. That's named after a former Chief Justice and a human rights activist, as you know. The question is this: in running the school and developing young and old lawyers in that school, in what way do you think technology such as ChatGPT, without cheating and feeding it information to do your tasks for you, in what way can we use it to improve the offerings of the school? In other words, to make better lawyers of our charges in the Pius Lager School of Advocates? Just very briefly.
Can use it to be able to do research for you, to give you information on topics much, much easier. Tell me about cases that are around this particular
rule, for example. So I can feed it a word and say, the Turkwan rule, what is it about and in what circumstances do you apply?
Exactly, and then it will write an essay and tell you what it is about. So it is going to speed up the research process, because since algorithms simply work faster than us and they read things faster than we do, you will be able to get information and summaries of information much more quicker than if you are not using these tools. It's basically a calculator if you think about it. There was a time when if you wanted to multiply 300 times 300, you will have to go and multiply the way we were taught when we were in primary school. And it was useful 100 years ago when there were no calculators. But today you have calculators. So you calculate fast so that you can use your time to do things that machines don't do well.
Right. Thank you, Prof. Now, the last question is a broad one. Is there anything in our discussion today that we haven't touched on and that you would have loved to talk about, to tell us about?
Absolutely. I mean, in the book, Leading in the 21st Century, which, by the way, I wrote because I realized that our people are no longer reading. I would go to, you have good choice. Excellent book. And it came about, all those books, I actually read them. I actually went and discussed the books with my staff and students, all 50 of them. That has happened. And one of the book that I read was Heart of Darkness. And I read it during the time when statutes were of slave masters and racists were being toppled. And I was grappling with the issue. What do you do with statues of horrible men? Normally men, because women have performed much better in that score. So
well, some would say there was Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah, but certainly, if you look in history, the people who really caused all the wars, First World War, it was men around the table. Second World War, Hitler was a man. Goebbels was a man, and you can name this on and on and on and on and on. Of course, there are women. Bad happens in all aspects of society. So I was grappling with this issue. I was grappling with this issue and saying that maybe we should take those statues and put them in the museum. The Germans never did that after the Second World War. They actually tried to. They removed. If there was a street named after a Nazi, they basically just removed it. And now the question that comes is, what happens to history? Is there no danger that if you remove certain things, they are going to be forgotten, and if they are forgotten, then they're going to be repeated? And how do you do that? Do you create museums of horrible men, and so on and so forth? So I wrote an op-ed, and President Thabo Mbeki, who wrote the foreword of the book, actually replied with a 10-page reply. I must confess, by the time I wrote the book, I had modified many of my views because of President Thabo Mbeki's intervention. Very incisive. And at the end, I was asking myself, so what do I do with these 10 pages? because they're obviously of historical significance. I quote some of the texts from those pages in the book, but they are not published anywhere. That was when I came with the idea that they should be put in our library. Because they're so
I
important.
see.
Yeah.
What specific issues did President Mbeki address in his 10-page response to your original manuscript?
Well, I was very critical of Heart of Darkness because it uses very racially heavy words. And of course, we do know that Conrad, there was a book where he used the N-word, which ultimately he had to change the title. You can't use that title today. And he says, no, if he, the Congo during Leopold's horrible rule was not a pleasant sight. The language that was being used was not a pleasant language. If you are to modify it, you might not represent history as it is, and it shall be repeated. And you are not doing justice to the people who suffered from it. We have to know how horrible the treatment of the people in the DRC were during that time. And that treatment actually included the use of vulgar language that insult me when I read the work, when I read Heart of Darkness. And I draw a lesson out of this book that we should not be afraid to state things as they are, but we should use the pen, we should use whatever platform to interpret them as they are in their vulgarity. If they are destructive to people, we have to specify that they are destructive to the psychology of people, and if needs be, it should not be read by people who are not ready to read the work, like 11-year-olds, until they are old enough to be able to read difficult work themselves. The same way we do to movies. You go to a movie, they will say, this movie, if you are under 13, you can't watch it. The same thing you should do to some form of literature, especially the ones that are racially insensitive.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Tshilidzi Marwala, thank you very much for
thank you very much.
We couldn't possibly have done justice to this book. We haven't even scratched the surface. There are numerous chapters that I would have liked us to talk about. May I reserve the right to call on you to discuss the rest?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will gladly come.
We really appreciate that. Thank you, Professor Marwala. You'll be happy to know that you are the only or the first interviewee on Anchored in Law who is neither a lawyer nor a judge. And,
oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that the lawyers and judges will learn a great deal from your input. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, Senior Counsel.